The last two pieces in this app are the query button listener, which is defined starting at line 216, and the edit button listener, defined starting at line 237. And these were registered when we created the tag buttons that represent a query tag pair. So if the user hits the tag button that represents the query button listener is going to be invoked, and its onClick method will execute. And the key new feature that we're demonstrating here is the concept called an intent. And basically, an intent, one of the key things it allows you to do is launch another activity to do something. Now, it turns out that there's an existing intent that allows us to view a URL. And let's take a look at how we do that. So in the onClick method, when the user touches a tag button that represents a query, we're going to get the button's text, and the view that's passed into the onClick method represents the specific button the user typed. We cast that view to type button, get its text, and get the string representation of that text. We then load up the corresponding query from the saved searches shared preferences file. At line 226, we create a URL string that represents the search.twitter.com string that's necessary to perform a search through the web browser, followed by the query text that we specified. So we call getString, which is an inherited method from the activity class, and we give it an argument, which is r.string.searchURL, which loads up one of the strings, in this case the search URL, from the strings.xml file. And I'm just going to open that file for a moment. Here is the search URL. You can see it's going to go to search.twitter.com, and it's going to invoke the search application, if you will, on the server side with the parameter q equals, and what goes to the right of this is the actual search string, the query string that we're supplying to the Twitter search capability. So we build this URL. Then at lines 229 and 230, this is how we launch the web browser. We create a new intent that says we would like to perform the view action. Intent.actionView is the so-called view action. We want to view the content at a specified URI, and we use the URI class's parse method with the URL string we created above to create a URI that can then be passed via this intent mechanism to be viewed. Now, the Android operating system knows that when you say to view a URL, it should invoke the system's browser. If you have only one browser on your system, it will simply go and open that browser and display for you the contents of that URL, which in this case will also perform the search for us. On the other hand, if there are multiple web browsers stored on your device, or not stored but installed on your device, excuse me, then the operating system will automatically display for you a menu in which you can choose which activity to launch to view that URI. So, for example, the Opera browser, there's a mobile version of it. So let's say you've installed Opera and you have the default web browser that's built into Android. In that case, the Android operating system recognizes that there are multiple activities that are capable of viewing a URI and lets you choose which one to use. So that's all handled for you behind the scenes. You just create the new intent object as we're showing you here. Then you call the inherited start activity method, which is inherited from class activity, and you pass it the intent, and it automatically passes that to the operating system to launch the appropriate intent, or the appropriate activity, excuse me, using that intent. Separately, when we have the edit button, of course, what we now want to do is edit the existing query tag pair. In that case, when the edit button's onClick method gets executed, we will get the row in which that particular edit button appeared, because that row contains the button that in turn represents the tag for the tag query pair. So we get the parent of that view, which is the table row. The button called search button is then located within that view. Then at line 247, we get the text from that button, which we have to use to look up the corresponding query tag or query value, excuse me. We then set the tag edit text to the tag value and the query edit text's text to the result of saveSearches.getString with the appropriate tag. So this loads up the query tag pair into the edit text at the top of the user interface. If the user modifies the query and then hits the save button, the query will be stored back with the corresponding tag. If the user modifies the tag, then it will potentially create a new query tag pair in the underlying shared preferences object. And I say potentially because remember, if the tag matches any of the existing tags that you've stored previously, it will simply update the value associated with that tag. On the other hand, if it's not a match for any of the existing ones, then it will create a new tag for you. So you've now seen how to build the favorite Twitter searches app. And again, we took a look at a number of key new technologies in this example, such as the ability to inflate a portion of your GUI dynamically, which we do every time the user creates a new query tag pair, the intent mechanism, which allows you to launch other applications to handle different types of content, and we'll take a look at that mechanism in more detail in later apps as well, and a variety of other new features were presented in this application.